Our guest this hour is Mrs. Kanze Dena Mararo, who has very many titles. Secretary Communication, State House Spokesperson, Head of the Presidential Strategic Communication Unit. All those things. Can we just say the President's spokesperson?
Perfect.
Kanze, good to have you on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad to be here.
Welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you. I hope I don't burn.
Definitely, you cannot burn. I mean, surely. It is just hot. It's not actually boiling hot.
It's not literally hot. It's conversationally hot.
It's just fun is hot. Yeah, and we intend to
listen to these men.
As you sit there, we are honored that you have joined us this morning. You have very many titles. You joined State House in 2018. That's when you left us on this side of the Fourth Estate. And you went to that side where you're the newsmaker, person to be quoted. So what is your job exactly?
Okay, first and foremost, I head the Presidential Communications Unit, which of course is basically running His Excellency's newsroom. So I coordinate what our narrative for the day would be, and of course now managerially oversee all the stuff. That's one position. The second thing is I hold press briefings. Basically, the reason to hold the press briefings is more to emphasize His Excellency's message, because it's just a means of being able to let the people know what His Excellency is doing, what his interests are in, and where he's going. That's another thing that I do. Then the third thing is we just generally overlook oversee. Sorry, now I'm used to being in the studio and speaking Kiswahili. So today I have removed all my English.
Don't worry. We also love Kiswahili. That is why we overlook the overseeing.
Yes. So basically, then of course now from a day to day, arrange all media engagements for His Excellency.
Okay.
Yes.
So you still run a newsroom?
I do.
It's only that you're not running a newsroom from this side, you're running a newsroom from that side.
Basically.
Okay. What's the difference between the job of the State House spokesperson and the government spokesperson?
There's not really, the only difference, basically, if I could say that, is that we just handle a little bit of, our dockets are slightly different in the sense that I specifically do speak for His President and handle State House. He now coordinates the entire government. That is all the ministries, the parastatals, and all that. But our messages are always intertwined. So whatever he's saying, I know. Whatever I'm saying, he knows. But I can't move on to, for example, if I'm to give a good example, is like now we're distributing food, right? So we flagged it off as the president. How it got to Mashinani and where it went to is what you've been seeing my brother Oguna doing. So that's basically what happens. Sometimes we feel like we clash, but we found a way to work around it together. Yes.
We've seen very many people who've headed this unit called PPS, PSCU, PP, and Isaiah Kabira, it had a different name, so it was
PPU.
PP.
Presidential Press
PPS.
It was PPU and the Moi's time with Linjiro.
Then PPS and
then
Isaiah
PPS
Kabira.
was Isaiah Kabira.
Then when Manoa took over,
Manoa SCP to PSCU.
Yes.
And now His Excellency Manoa. And of course, the soon to be Her Excellency Kanze Dena is also PSCU. Does your job then have to have you following the president wherever he goes and sitting behind him with a notebook?
I do follow the president everywhere he goes. I do sit down to take notes wherever he is. And also something else that we do is because I need to coordinate the reporters, the social media and all to make sure that we are running the same message. So that is a requirement that I need to be where he is.
I have to ask the question, is it only where he is on public functions where there's an agricultural show, there's a building that's being inaugurated, or say, for instance, if he's in Sagana, meeting the gentleman from his neck of the woods, are you also in that forum as well?
Yes.
So
there are those
in
forums.
Every forum.
So basically, what happens is that there are forums that are private.
Yes.
Like when he's having one-on-ones with the other presidents and stuff like that, or even with wazees like you're talking about. So we have one-on-one meetings on their closed door. Those ones I don't sit in because they are private. They're privately his. But every other engagement I sit in. Yeah.
So you've had kind of like a seat at the shoulder over the last 4 years,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Over the last 4 years to
Yes.
be able to see what has been happening.
Yes.
If you were to give an overview of how the administration has carried itself over the last 4.5 years, what would you say? How has it been? Challenging? Have you been able to fulfill what was set out at the second half of this administration?
Okay. Because I came in on the second half of this administration, and His Excellency's focus was on the Big Four agenda. So I have basically overseen how we've been able to communicate, and also overseen projects that have been undertaken under the Big Four agenda. And the one thing, if you notice with this Big Four agenda, it basically involves in economic empowerment, one, and also the social welfare of the Kenyans. Hence manufacturing, food security, housing, and health. From where we sit, and from where I sit, as you've asked me, is that I feel His Excellency, or I know His Excellency, has put his best foot forward as far as all these pillars are concerned. In any engagement he has, that is where he first puts his focus. How does this affect either of the pillars that we are handling? In health, we've been able to put up health facilities in different areas in the country, working together with county governments, and also just giving the informal sectors an example. Those were areas where we never had health facilities. They really had to travel far and wide. Now they're able to have a health facility right where they are. If you look at food security, a lot has been done through partnerships with organizations like the National Irrigation Organization and all, to just make sure that we are moving our farmers from rain-fed agriculture all the way to being able to irrigate, because irrigation is a direction that His Excellency has taken for us to be able to achieve the food security pillar. In manufacturing, a lot has also been done. Incentives have been brought in for investors to also come in and create the environment that is conducive. Housing. Affordable housing hasn't kicked off the way we would have wanted it to be, because of course there have been a few setbacks here and there. However, the project has still taken over, and there are people now occupying homes under the affordable housing. Yeah.
Do you write the president's speech?
No, we have speechwriters.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you go through the president's speech maybe before or after?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I'm asking this is because we are talking about the Big Four agenda
Yes.
here. The president, upon swearing in for the second term, he told us his agenda for the next 5 years.
Yes.
At the end of 2017, is going to be the Big Four. So by the time you're joining State House, mid 2018,
Yes.
Big Four was already
Rolling out. Yes.
At that point, did you understand the Big Four to be that this is going to be the defining legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta?
Yes, I did.
So in 2020, when the president went to Parliament and said, we are on course to delivering
Big Four.
our Big Four agenda. However, I need to emphasize that the Big Four agenda, what we've been doing is setting the foundation, and we have set a firm foundation. We discussed it here and we said, it sounds like the president is changing tack.
Really?
He did not say that I want to set a foundation for the next 5 years. He said, I want to deliver for the next 5 years. He even set in numbers and said how many number of houses.
Yes.
He even said the milestones that are going to be achieved in terms of universal health care coverage, in terms of food security, in terms of manufacturing, and even the numbers. So by the time when the president comes to Parliament and delivers a State of the Nation and says, it's not going to be realized, but we are setting a foundation, is that not changing?
I don't think you can look at it as changing, because, Eric, I want you to be witness of the fact that for you to achieve any project or to achieve any goal, you need to set an agenda, which His Excellency did set. We also have to be cognizant that for 2 years, we were not able to work because we had the COVID pandemic. And a lot of the things had to shift. We were now thinking about Kazi Mitaani to take care of the young people. We were thinking about where subsidies were going to come to help people who were not able to feed themselves, and manufacturing was not taking place. We tried to do job cuts. So basically the focus shifted quite a bit for the 2 years. So basically we're now coming to the end of the 5-year term, having not achieved what His Excellency wanted to, but now has set the foundation for that to continue. because we haven't been able to achieve it. That's true. We accept that. But we also know that for 2 years, we were not able to do anything. We would have achieved much more than what we are achieving by 2020 or by now 2023 when we are leaving, 2022, the numbers there, 2022. But a big step has been taken. And so now it comes back to the point that we have done this. We wish we would have taken it a little bit further, but these are the stakes, or these are the obstacles that we met. And so now this becomes the foundation for what can be achieved much more later.
The communication is an interesting thing. And the debate we had amongst ourselves here on this very subject, you see, the thing we kept asking ourselves is, okay, when the president speaks, it's from a position of information.
Yes.
He understands and he knows. So he's actually stating something that has been discussed by the people. Experts have come in, they've informed him. So he's stating it as it is.
Yes.
But yet there's a different reality. And the reality, for instance, if we look at the infrastructure in this country, any of these huge capital projects, none of them is short term. They are all long term. All. And very rarely, in fact, hardly, are they completed in the term of one presidency. Some even go to 3 presidencies. We have others that have never been fulfilled with all the presidencies we've had. Now, when it comes to communication, this is where we debate and ask, so what should come first? When these matters are being spoken of, should they from the get-go say, folks, these are plans we have. Okay, this is what we'd like to achieve. But the reality of these things is we are going to do our bit, and the likelihood is that we will get here. And the understanding is that, again, that the foundational story comes in, that whoever comes after us will then be able to continue. And then give the example and say, like these roads. We take credit for it, yes, but the foundation of this road was started by the previous administration. Now, in so doing, you then get the public to understand how government works. Because the narrative that we hear from our politicians, even things that are patently clear, were started off by some other person's administration. The current administration that completes it takes full credit for it. And yet, what they've done is done their bit in ensuring that it has come to fruition. So, when it comes to communicating these things, why is it that the communication is always take credit for everything, even things that full well other people have contributed to bringing to fruition?
I think you take credit for the part that you have played. And if you have played a part in bringing something to completion, then you can take credit.
Yes.
And I'll give you a very good example. You're here now as the Situation Room, right? You take this show to the greatest level. I mean, KTN, a Standard Group as an institution, know where they want SpiceFM to go, right? So you start it off, isn't it? And then Kanze, I come after I'm done with my job and I continue the Situation Room. And I take it to another notch.
Yep.
It's still part of the dream. But do we then say that I cannot say I'm running the top show?
You can.
I can.
Yes, you
because
can.
at that particular point in time, you handed over the baton. I just took it a notch higher. So there's nothing wrong in me saying, in my tenure, in my time, Situation Room gained another 1 million followers. And then we'll leave it on for the next person who's going to come. So I agree. You may feel that we need to come out and communicate and say that these roads were started by so and so and so and so. And His Excellency has also said that in many of his speeches, that what Kibaki left, I completed. And I've taken over. And I've continued with others and begun others. My expectation is that the next government will continue with them. Let's also be cognizant of the fact that this is when devolution took over. Because there had never been a devolved government before. You get my point? So
Yes.
the desire to want to achieve all those things is there. The plan and the hope is there. Whether we get to the moon or to the sun or not is something else. But the question is, has the journey begun?
Sure.
It has.
It has.
Do you begin the journey by saying that I want to take you to Mombasa?
Yes.
Or do you begin the journey by saying we are going to Mombasa, I will drive you up to Emali?
I will say I'm going to Mombasa. However, it's possible I could get a tire burst and we can't get there. Or my engine will knock and will not get there. What I'm saying in short is that the desire to take you to Mombasa is there.
And we're going to get in the car.
And we're going to get into the car and we will start driving. So when the tire bursts or when the engine bursts, will you say that I failed?
Kanze, you know,
Will you say that I have failed? No. Answer. Will you say that I have failed?
I cannot say that you have failed.
Exactly.
Because that is something that is beyond your control.
Exactly.
However, if you get to Mtito and you're late from the bus,
Yes.
right? And you tell me now, Eric, get onto this matatu, huyu atakupeleka Mombasa. I will look at you and then, Kanze, you told me you are taking me to Mombasa.
But am I still not taking you to Mombasa even if I put you on another bus?
You see, that is now changing. You're changing the vehicle, you're changing the time, you're changing everything. You're changing the driver.
So let me understand.
I probably got onto this bus because I trusted you as a driver.
Okay.
I probably got onto this bus because I trusted the bus and the vehicle that you're using.
Okay.
Now, when you get someone, you tell me, you know, nimekutoa Nairobi bwana. This is Mtito. We have come somewhere. We have come somewhere. I've set the foundation.
Yes.
For the next driver.
But we have.
That's where the communication, that's what it is asking.
I'm getting
the
I'm
communication
getting what you're saying.
at this point, should it not have been very clear that the journey is to Mombasa? This vehicle and myself, I'll take you up to Mtito and from Mtito I have made arrangements that there'll be another vehicle waiting for us. You'll board that one, and we've even reserved a seat for you. It'll take you.
Point taken.
Okay.
Point taken.
There's been, I think we cannot run away from the criticism as well that has come with this. There, from very many sectors, have been. Stuff like this, the communication that many things have been happening, and I don't think we have a conversation on a day when somebody doesn't bring up the fact that the president himself has said that corruption continues to be one of the biggest things that plagues this administration, giving figures of 2 billion a day and things like this. How has that been dealt with in the inner circles to say, okay, folks, this is what the message is coming out to people, but how are we dealing with this internally? Because it can't be fun. The criticism has been sharp, continues to be.
Yes.
And there's still a lot then that continues to pick at.
Yes.
How?
Okay, you see, one of the things that we have been able to communicate, even through His Excellency, is to acknowledge that, yes, the corruption is there. And what has been happening so far, we've seen him taking steps and also confessing that we are going to take these guys out. Unaona sasa Kiswahili ndio inakuja kwa kichwa.
Don't worry. What you've said, I like. It communicates effectively the seriousness with which this thing has been taken. Please continue.
CT. Anyway, so basically, what has happened is that we have tried to find ways in how to further be able to communicate the same thing. And one of the things that have happened is that you will see that in times of when there's been a very big conversation on corruption, like, say, for example, I'm trying to pick one at the top of my mind, KEMSA. And we're talking about COVID billionaires and everything. An investigation was instituted. That, of course, comes with His Excellency's presence and His Excellency's involvement. And then the management change. That still comes with His Excellency's statement or participation. So the next that is left is for the courts. And that's why you continuously hear him saying over and over again that I have done my bit. And what is remaining is for the investigations to happen and for the court to go through the due process. Yes. So internally, with all the organizations that are there, even including with Oguna, what we try and to seek to do is to figure out, to work continuously in ensuring and telling people the narrative that this is how far we have come and this is what we are waiting for, basically. So we are at that point.
Kanze, you deal with the president on a daily basis.
Yes.
And you have seen the man. You've seen the man in his work. You have seen his passion. You've seen what he wants to deliver. Do you get a sense sometimes that he sort of gets frustrated by the limitations according to the law?
Yes, he does.
So what does he want to do about that? I mean, does he appreciate the fact that he is not the one to direct the director of public prosecution on what to do? He cannot direct.
Yes, because he obeys
the judiciary.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he does. But at the end of the day, you see the Kenyans, we made a constitution that made him have those limitations, isn't it? So basically, the least that he can do is take steps that, like what I said, change the management at KEMSA, change whatever it is. But it does frustrate him because sometimes he would want to change something, make a difference somewhere, but he can't.
But does it also occur to him that maybe sometimes the actions that he takes dictate the pace at which everything else will follow? the investigations, the prosecutions, and also the public perception. When, for example, we talk about this particular case of Kamsa, let's change the board. Let us bring in management.
New people, yes.
But you're changing the board and still appointing a chairman from this board to also head another crucial institution. Does that not send another different message of? So it's you have not changed the board because you want to see you have raised concerns yourself about the management of this institution. You have changed the board because there's too much public pressure on this side. So I mean, chairman here can move and become chairman here, even as investigations are ongoing.
Is there one that is like that?
Yes. The former chairman of KEMSA is the chairman of the Communications Authority, Senator Kembi Gitura.
Yes, okay, Kembi Gitura, yes.
So at that particular point, when you're having conversations about KEMSA and the president himself has said, I have directed that I want to see a report on KEMSA within the next 30 days. Of course, the next 30 days come and the president does not say, this is the report that I received. But then the next step is he appoints the chairman of KEMSA to be the chairman of the Communications Authority. Does that not send a different message?
You know, the thing that comes to my mind as you ask this question, or are there things that are pertinent to the decision-making process that we can't be privy to? I mean, they are discussed at that level, but for our consumption as the public, this is what we are told.
And for our sanity.
And for our sanity and for our well-being.
I was just you just picked the words out of my mouth.
I did?
Yes.
Okay. So.
Because I was just going to say, you see, there's the workings that you and I can, even probably I don't have. When he sits on his one-on-one meetings, I also have no idea what he's told. What I can assure you is that he follows up the cases. So the people involved or the ministries involved and the parasitals involved do come in and they have a sitting. So there are things that, yes, we're not privy to. There are things probably we are not allowed to get to know because it will probably open a Pandora's box. And so they're being handled in secrecy, for lack of a better word, in secrecy or behind closed doors. But then we eventually see the outcome after a series of those meetings and a series of the process.
Let's take a break at this point and then we continue the conversation.
Okay.
It's 28 minutes to 9. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, SpiceFM on KTN Home and on YouTube and Facebook. Our guest is Kanze Dena Mararo. She's the Secretary Communication, State House Spokesperson, and also the head of the Presidential Strategic Communications Unit. We are talking about President Uhuru Kenyatta's scorecard, what he's been able to achieve in the last 9 years of his presidency, coming to the end in August. What has the president been able to achieve? What did he set out to do? Because the spokesperson is here, let's just say that we have the president in the room with us.
This is The Situation Room.
Conversation, of course, happens every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Kanze, we've seen the president react to very many things that happen in the public. For example, nationwide power outage. And it's established that it's because pylons collapsed and there may have been some vandalism that caused that. The president spoke about it publicly. The issue of the border borders, woman is molested and it's a public outcry and the president says, you know what, mentions it publicly. But then there are questions that emerge, and it was even a conversation that we were having on Friday here. Insecurity in Kerio Valley, insecurity in Baringo, West Pokot, going into Samburu, going into Marsabit and Laikipia counties, and we don't hear the president speaking about it when more than 120 people have died, when many of them are facing starvation. When you talk about food security, Kerio Valley and all the irrigation schemes have been affected by this insecurity, yet we don't hear the president speaking about it. Why?
I'm thinking the Ministry of Internal Security and that is headed by CS Matiang'i is basically tasked with that task, and every security briefing that is brought to His Excellency, he gives direction. He may not have publicly spoken about it, but every action that you see out there, being deployment of security and figuring out a way to end the chaos there, there's His Excellency's involvement. Like you'll notice there's a time that His Excellency brought in Marsabit leaders to State House to have a conversation. Because what we've noticed is that some of these conflicts are actually like interclan and all those kind of things that are causing the mayhem. So what His Excellency has been able to do is look for the leaders of these particular regions to sit down and have a conversation. Because as much as there would be a deployment of security officers everywhere, it's also it has to come down to a personal and intentional approach for the leaders on the ground. So he may not have spoken speaking out like you mean about, you say, what do you call this? Speaking it out like what you say, like the borders. But they have been even in his statements when he's spoken about security. We have spoken about those things.
You know, why I'm asking that is because we have heard from the people of Kerio Valley, we've heard from the people of Laikipia, from the people of Marsabit and others, where they ask, are we children of a lesser God? Are we not worthy of a mention or direct address by the president? When they write to the Secretary General of the United Nations and they say, we feel like we've been let down by our government, is because they don't feel the person who is directly in charge of security in the country, who is the president, addressing that issue directly.
If I can jump onto that question, Kanze, from Eric, then I think it would be for this communication to come through, whether it comes through you or whether it comes directly, who does the president listen to? In terms of then what he should be shedding light on, who does he listen to? Who is giving him the feelers in terms of, here is what Kenya is saying, here is what Kenya is going through, here is what Kenya is saying is important right now. Who does the president then listen to? Who advises him then on what he must pay attention to and communicate them through you?
He gets briefings from different sectors. We'll get briefings from the security sector, from different sectors, to keep him at base and to give him the information that he needs concerning every particular situation. That's why I'm telling you, like, if he's having a security briefing and they'll sit down and map out and say, then the best way for us to handle this is to move this here, to move this there, to bring this here. That happens. It is good also to have that feedback and to note that the people would want His Excellency himself to be able to address those things, because in already administering and giving direction to administer an action to be done in those areas, he on his part has felt that he has taken,
that the job has been done.
The job has been done. You get my point? So because he has directed, guys, you military do this, interior do this, do this, do this. And so it's good feedback to also hear that they would want to hear him speak on it. So that is a point noted and taken.
I want to ask a different question.
Yeah.
And that is, there is a narrative that is hereditary in our presidential system where people must hear the president speak. We have a new constitution. We don't have an all-powerful president like we had before the constitution. And yet, there is still in existence that need to hear the president speak. And yet, all the ministries that we have within this particular government and within this structure that we have the power to do exactly what it is that they're supposed to do. I get the impression that even those who are in these ministries still follow that same mantra of waiting for the president to give them direction.
To tell them what to do.
And yet they have a job. I'm saying I get the impression.
No, okay, sorry. If that's the impression that I've given, that's wrong. What I mean
No, it's not you who's given the impression.
Okay, because
this one I've done all on my own.
On your own.
Yes,
Okay.
without any assistance.
Okay.
Yes.
I think then what also needs to come out, which you've rightly put out, is that they need to be a little bit be vocal and also put out the message out there that this is what we are doing. And maybe that's a conversation that I can also go back and have with my co-spokesperson, Oguna, to see how best that works, because then he's the one mandated to work on all that area. So maybe we have failed. That's what I'm saying. And again, because it's a digital era, we may have felt that when you post something, when you do that something, it gets to the people. So I don't want to give you the notion that the ministries are waiting for...
No. It isn't you who's doing this. I'm just explaining a situation that we have in the country where the truth is people... No, you didn't actually. I'm glad you did what you did because you've actually shed light. People expect to hear from the president. Okay? What I'm asking is the team that you work with and that of Colonel Oguna, the whole communication apparatus within our system, how do they shift the public from this expectation?
That is the president who
Yes,
has to speak.
even when You know the Constitution limits the president's capacity. The president could have done this.
Yeah.
The conversation of what the president ought to do and should do and must do is at the heart of every conversation. And that's why that pressure on why have we not heard the president? Why have we not? So I'm asking those who are in charge of communicating this, having understood this problem probably better than we do, what are you doing to ensure that the people understand what is really going on? Because at the end of the day, you can say all you like, they're still waiting for the
For
president.
the president to speak.
Yes.
Noted.
It is. I think another thing.
Because I think, that's what I'm saying, I think we, when we speak, when we say, that's what I'm trying to say, when we say what we say because we know there are those limitations.
Sure.
Okay? But like you've said, it's because we are still at that point where we need His Excellency to speak.
Not only speak, we need him to come there and we need to see him in
see
person.
and do
course.
whatever it
Yes.
is. Yes.
Yes.
So I think then that's a challenge that you have actually thrown back to government, that we need to sit down and reframe for that to be understood, that His Excellency doesn't have to be everywhere, but he knows what is going on.
If I can give you an example.
Yeah.
When we had our first Kenyatta, as in Jomo, the second Kenyatta is called Uhuru. Okay?
Yes.
You didn't need to see Jomo. If the provincial commissioner appeared, you knew Jomo was speaking to you. You didn't go around questioning and doubting and wondering. And by the same token, if the local chief spoke to you, you knew the government was speaking to you. You didn't need Jomo to come and tell you. Okay? All I'm saying is that communication has not left our system.
Yes. Yes.
I think I've made my point.
You have made your point and it has been noted.
Right. Yes. And I think over time, society has become more verbalized.
Yes.
I think that with the opening up of government and its structure and the way in which then you have society being able to speak up, at least then share their mind in terms of what's going on. Now, in terms of reciprocity from the other
Yes.
side, it still seems as something that's necessary to hear. And so then the question is, does it matter to the government, to the president, what the people feel, what they fear, what they desire, what they hope for? Does it matter when that communication is coming out that, hold on, am I taking into consideration across board,
Yeah.
whether it is me as an individual or across government, what the people of Kenya need, want, fear? And then does that, or should it reflect? I'm going to give you an example. We saw the president shut down his Twitter account at some
Yes.
point because it would appear as though, the incrimination, he was being bombarded by people. But that's the thing. You want fresh air, you open the door. You cannot control the pests and everything else that comes. You were looking for fresh air, right? So does it then matter what the people feel? Then when you're communicating this, is it taken into consideration?
It does matter what the people feel and what they say and all that. And if you notice that in this second time, we've been very intentional about going to radio. Because one of the things that we realized was that the masses actually listen to radios. And so we've made it intentional to go down to the ground. So we want to know what the people in the coast are feeling. I'll do a tour in the coastal radios. And when I come back, I'll come back and tell His Excellency, this is what the people in the coast region are talking about. This is what ails them. We may need to look at this. We may need to look at this. I'll go down to Kisumu, do the same thing. So that's what we've just basically been trying to do as we go around in the vernacular station, so that we know. What that does is that it then feeds into his communication when we are going to that particular area. Yes.
The issue of the president's legacy, I'm sure it's a big one. And he already set up and said, these four,
Yeah.
with these four shall you judge me.
Yes.
The big four agenda.
Yes.
Now, you've also said, in fact, if you just break it down, there's economic empowerment and the social agenda.
Yes.
The other accompanying thing that comes with all this is the rising debt. Where we've gotten to a point where, yes, the president says, I inherited 3 or 4 trillion shilling economy from President Kenyatta. I am leaving an 11 or 13 trillion shilling to the next president. But he also inherited low debt levels and he's going to leave high debt levels. What is that? As the president speaks, how does he justify the high level of debt?
I think one of the things that we've been intentional is to speak is to say, for us to be able to have gained any development, we needed to have borrowed to get there. And that is not something that is strange to Kenya. Countries all around the globe, you borrow for development. The other thing that you need to understand is that the wage bill also went quite high from his taking his tenure. Because, like I mentioned, that's when the devolved government was there. Our devolved governments have not reached the point where they can be able to support themselves. They rely 100% on the national government. So, has there been borrowing? Yes, there has been borrowing. Have we failed to pay our debts? No, we haven't. And every time when there's borrowing, and even if you speak to the experts, they will let you know that when we have borrowed to know that where we are putting in the money is where we are going to be able to reap from it. Just the same way you and I would go to a bank to look for a loan to open up a business. We do that because we know with this money, when we invest it in the business, we will get this particular income and that will help us to pay back. So I feel that sometimes it's a narrative that we want to throw, just basically, first of all, because we're going in an election period and without us basically understanding the background as to why we borrow.
I think the financial experts who speak, and many of whom we've hosted here, have talked about not just the amount of money that we've borrowed, but the nature of the loans. Mm-hmm. A lot of this is the commercial loans, and they're short-term loans, which now become a burden so very soon to the government, even before the business has been able to start bringing in the returns, you already have to start paying. Now, that's where the questions come in. Mm-hmm. Why go this commercial route? Why not go into concessional loans with multilateral and bilateral lenders?
So, Latif, I think that conversation needs to be had by the experts. Why this particular loan and why not this particular loan? I would not be able to comment on that. Yeah.
You know, while we asked the question, one of the discussions we're having today when we look at the newspaper review was an article that appeared in the Business Daily. Mm-hmm. And the headline, main, debt payments surpass state running expenses. That for the first time in our history, what we're going to be paying back in debt is more than the recurrent expenditure that the government has. And they say it is worrying. Now, it is true. Even our understanding has come from many conversations we've had with experts. And it's a daunting thing. But why we're raising the question is because when you look at the figures, it can be worrying, and yet there's a logical explanation that an expert would be able to give so that we understand, so that's why this thing is more than the other. But simply from the way we handle our own finances, because that's where we begin our understanding.
Yes.
If what I'm paying is more than what I'm earning, then I have a problem. Mm-hmm. In fact, one could argue that I am fast approaching bankruptcy, okay? Mm-hmm. Because my finances cannot balance. From a national perspective, I am certain that there are explanations, but we have to ask the question because the communication at the end of it, so that there's clarity beyond the reporting, is really what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And since you are among the people whose task is to communicate certain things,
yes,
this matter of debt is something that needs to be communicated effectively. And clearly so that we understand. Mm-hmm. Because the truth of the matter is figures are tossed into the air, experts come in, doomsday scenario, another one comes in, less doomsday scenario. But if the government explained it, and not in a day.
Yes, it cannot be in a day. It cannot be in a day for sure.
Yeah, not in a day. For instance, the experts you speak of come to our show here and explain to us over a period of time how it is that this is happening.
How you reach to
yes, and why it isn't something that we should be worrying about. It's something that we should actually understand. And connect it with whatever it is that we're doing. Now, then, at least a peace of mind will have been attained. But as things stand, they're not just worrying.
Scary.
They're disconcerting.
Okay.
Yes.
The president made us several promises. Yes. One is he was hosting journalists in Mombasa, and he was asked, can we get clarity on some of these contracts, especially this SGR contract? Mm-hmm. And he said, you want that contract? I'll make it available. To date, it hasn't been made available. Just the other day when the president was heading to the United Nations General Assembly, that is the time when the Pandora Papers were making the headlines. And he said, I have read and I've seen the conversation happening around the Pandora Papers. Let me make you this promise. When I come back, I'll address this particular issue.
No comment.
When the president makes this and then he doesn't follow up, What is the reason behind it?
No comment.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what we surmise from it.
Okay, yes, true. It's good to hear.
You see, what we surmise is that there's a lot going on that we can't be told, okay? But worse still, we are then left to configure anything that our fertile imaginations may choose. And the problem with that is that there's no end to it. We'll move from one extreme to the other. A little guidance. You know, when you're in a democracy such as ours, which is guided, even the conversation ought to be guided so that we at least have perimeters within which we can take our argument and thinking. Don't let our imagination run too wild and too loose.
If there's the space, if there's a space that something has been left, right? Just like he's saying, we're going to fill it up with something.
Exactly.
It could be
Anytime there's a
speculation.
vacuum.
It could be truth, according to Kenyans. It could be lies. But you know what? There's a hole and something has filled that hole. And I guess we still have to ask that question again. That here there are people who are conjuring up things for themselves. Does it not matter then to be able to set the record straight on some of these things? Because
does matter.
it to me, it is as big a legacy, even if you're going to explain something, as putting up a multi-billion shilling road, as putting up infrastructure in the country, that at some point you told the people the truth. Even if it was not in its entirety, you let them know, that this is what you thought and cared enough to explain to them. I think it's as big as a legacy as leaving a road here for people to
And
drive.
I would argue it's a better legacy when you remember that, we had this straight shooting president who told us things we didn't particularly want to hear. But,
I said it.
it came to pass that what he was saying all along was actually true.
Point taken, feedback taken.
Another one. This is not actually, in terms of feedback, it's basically asking the question. And the question here is, when the president is coming to make a public statement, just like CT said earlier, the assumption is that he has sat down with the various experts and the various people who deal with these particular sectors, and they've given him information. And they've told him, Mr. President, this time will be done. He has asked the questions, and they've assured him. This president, we discuss it here and we say, he is not just the ordinary person. He has demonstrated he's fairly intelligent. Then he consumes intelligence. And then he has access to information that many of us don't have. So when the president comes in October and says, by December, power bills will come down by 33%, you assume that this is after carefully considering information. Come December, the president says, we are on course. We shall actually have 15% by the end of December. And the end of December, that doesn't happen. The question is, how does the president arrive at his decisions? Does he consider the advice that is given by the experts that he has put in office? Or does he sometimes look at the advice and say, you guys, I have also other sources of information. I'm giving the example of the power bills. First promise, December. Second promise, end of December. Third promise, end of March. How many days to the end of March, Ndu?
3.
Okay. Another promise he made in the middle of December, that in March, the expressway will be complete. He'll open it. He'll drive from Chumvi, Machakos Junction to Maimahiu Junction. How many days to the end of March?
Still 3.
Okay. Explain.
Okay, I think one of the things that we need to note is that sometimes there are some unforeseen challenges that happen. So when that particular shift happens, it's because of those unforeseen challenges where we discuss and we see that, we can build this house. And then we come back and realize that we actually have molds around here that we need to first take care of before we can continue to build the house. That automatically brings the work will not be completed in the time that it needs to be done and will not be carried out in the same time that it needs to be done. If you're talking about the expressway, like for example, you said we're going to drive on it, the expressway, the plan is still on course. What happens is that sometimes when he says he's going to do it at the end of March, sometimes there are programs that come in between that hinder him from doing that. And that's why I'm saying it's not him not wanting to do it. It's that sometimes there are programs that come in because he automatically didn't have 100% control of his diary. So he would say, for example, on the 26th, I want to go do this. But when we come back and sit and figure out the diary planners and everything, they'll see and say, this particular thing cannot work now. Or it's better for us to do it on this particular in this particular season. But I have gotten to what I'm getting what you're saying is that if he had said that he was going to do it on the 23rd, then we also need to come back and say we cannot do it on the 23rd because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Absolutely.
I've noted that.
Asante.
Yes.
Kanze,
Yes.
in 30 seconds, I know I'm very sorry that I'm cutting it to 30.
No, don't worry.
Give a message to Kenyans. I'm sure we all know the president is leaving. The president has done a lot. Speak to the country.
I think the one thing that His Excellency has been very keen on and would like to take out as a message is that we are one people under one God, and we need to refuse to be divided. Peace prevails in this country. Tushikane mikono pamoja kazini na kila siku tuwe na shukrani.
On that one, I'm with the president. Thank him very much for us.
Thank you.
We hope to have him here
Yes.
soon.